Awaken Beauties, finally, it's here. The truth to empower women to true inner beauty through a healthy mind and inner biology. I am your hostess, Cassandra Keogh, a 20-year salon owner, organic beauty product formulator, positive mind management, and clinical hypnotherapist. And I am here to help you stay sane, get sleep, and bring your sexy back. Sponsored by evoquebeauty.com. evoquebeauty.com. Now, let's get to it. Welcome to the Awaken Beauty Podcast. This is Cassandra, your organic beauty, positive mind management, and clinical hypnotherapist. Now, previous episodes have talked a little bit about the intuition of a neurodivergent brain. And really, when we look into the next phase of what I call a creative entrepreneur, going from 4.0 to creative entrepreneurship 5.0, we start to align and use all of these different neural networks that we intuitively have in our mind, in our IT, our intuitive tools that we use as neurodivergents, as creative entrepreneurs, as aspirational visionary leaders. And we then get to start to say, okay, how is the brain mechanism working? And then how can we cross it over into the new entrepreneurial 5.0 framework of really understanding the networks and how we can use it to our strengths? Because whether it's Seth Godin, many other leaders, we all understand that we're moving out of this very linear framework and we're moving into the creative and purpose-driven framework. And you absolutely better bet that AI and the metaverse and VR, all of this is going to be a part of that experience. Now, when we understand how a neurodivergent and a brain works in that kind of creative structure, we have to have some different guidelines that really help us, number one, understand the mechanisms of our brain. And then number two, learn that we need to be able to correl it in and not get so lost in the creative, because that dopamine hit, as we know, will become an overrunner of our entire life. And that is called addiction, it's called depression, and it's called overwhelm. So let's tap in real quick. I'm going to go through some frameworks, and this is going to help us tap into how we can really manage the 5.0 creative entrepreneur landscape we're going to be stepping into, and how we can help others do the same if they are in this kind of mindset, mind frame, and intuitive creature that we live in a neurodivergent mind, maybe called ADD, maybe creative entrepreneur, whatever that is for you. Now, what it can feel like, is I want you to bring your imagination in with me, is like you're in a desert and you're understimulated, right? And that's what it can feel like if you have a neurodivergent brain. And the science is very clear that those with ADD lack dopamine. It is a genetic disruption, and we have problems with its transport. And we call it the Val gene. There's many different structures that you can get now with genetic testing, but the science is far more exact. But evidence from many studies, such as, go to Google and do a quick search, and you will be very, very clear that our genetic makeup is a neurobiological indifference of dopamine. So the genes involved, including some linked to addiction, lead to different shortages of this vital neurotransmitter. So dopamine is absolutely critical for mental stimulation, reward, and interest. And so with neurodivergence, we are very much understimulated a lot of the day. And so it can feel like we are in a desert, a hot desert without any water, desperately seeking that stimulation of that drink. And our neurodivergent, non ADD companions have a water bottle on their backs at all times, perhaps maybe even a tube that just kind of spins around their neck and they can suck from it whenever they're thirsty. It's more effortless, right? Now, in a digital age, this is becoming a struggle for many, but they can wander with a little bit more ease and they can watch the shadow play across these dunes. But on a neurodivergent brain, unfortunately, we are on a mission to an oasis. So that low dopamine, that lower stimulation means our motivations and our interests and decisions differ from the norm. And our focus is interest-based. So we focus on interesting more than important. And we live in a non-linear, we live outside of time versus in time. And we have memory complications. I'm not going to call them issues because they're complications where we struggle with that low interest information like names, dates, instructions, birthdays, and we seek that simulation in whatever is available. Now, I just got done with the birthday yesterday, and it was quite funny because I thought my birthday was on the 6th, and I'm thinking it was the 7th. And I had my hit list. I could not believe all the people that forgot my birthday. And I was laughing when I looked at my clock at 5:15 and realized it is not your birthday, Cassandra. And so on the 7th, I had my closest friend wish me a happy birthday and what have you. And I told my friend, and this funny story, she's like, oh, quite interesting. She goes, yeah, you forgot my birthday last year. And so I don't use this as an excuse, but I can kind of step off the gas a little bit of the shame and the guilt that so many of us live in that just don't really register those memory type short-term, long-term inhibitions that I just forget everybody's birthday. But anyways, it is an understimulated mind. It's interest-based, right? So it's frustrating to read so often that people with neurodivergent brains can't pay attention. Sorry, my friends. We have no problem paying attention to something that I find stimulating and very fascinating. And it could be a personal project, or I could be imagining myself now creating this huge metaverse for everybody to come into. And we have this conscious community, and now it's tokenized. Now you can see where the brain goes quite quickly. Big picture. And so helpful when studying or writing. They're talking about this on this audio for you, but problematic when I miss a meeting or I'm running late and I totally forgot to hit the Zoom button and actually get on the call that I promised somebody I would get on. Now, I don't really ever do that, but believe me, I've been on the other receiving side of individuals that I absolutely give grace to. But the main problem here comes from that low interest, that low stimulation task. So redundant things, tax returns, household chores, all of those things, that discipline is not very highly attuned. Now, we are understimulated, right? So we need to be a little bit more savvy on how we need to apply ourselves. And so we find ourselves either daydreaming, bored, or more often distracted. And so it's not necessarily coming down to a list. And this is the differentiation where I stand outside of the neurodivergent ADD cohort, is that it is being aligned with your true nature and purpose. Then comes in the agility to bring different focus factors into your day, whether that's a planner, they've never worked for me, but whatever that is for you, for me, it is getting it out on a mind map, drawing it all out, and then processing it and simplifying it down over and over again. So I'm staying in that hyper focus. I'm not bored. I'm highly stimulated, and my left brain is now starting to come in that brings that big picture in to try to figure out how it can simplify it. And so that's really important because the working memory is like the RAM in a computer, and it is where information is temporarily held while we're constructing that sentence into formation, that problem solving equation, that remembering where simple things like where we put the keys or someone's name, right? The information is highly valuable. And we then store it in that long term memory, like saving to a disk to recall it later. So it's really important on this factor that those that have neurodivergent brains get lots of rest, get lots of omega 3s, are very much in balance with orientating their energy, meaning their high energy, and making sure that they have double time to be able to rest the body, to rest the brain, because it will always, always seek that next big thing, right? So it's really important for that memory and our future plans and our past history to come into a higher version of ourselves. So we see from that giraffe versus where the turtle is in its shell identity of shame and guilt and what have you, and not being able to emotionally tap in and regulate our emotions. So the giraffe is going to have the high view. It can come down to the bottom if it needs to, but that shell identity, that tortoise on the bottom, they're both holding the same geographic position, but that tortoise has such a small, condensed, tight feeling in the body, where that high view really understands the mechanisms of how its brain works, how it seeks stimulation, but also how it needs to come back down and find just that ease and restfulness so that it's not always head up, super awake, always highly stimulated. We need to find that balance. So what's really happening is that our default mode network is always active and it always demands our stimulation. So, if we're this traveler in a desert, right, we're desperately seeking that oasis, we need it to stay focused and engaged. So this deep drive for high stimulation is often satisfied with that excitement and learning and debate and new ideas and the novelty and the exploration. And so that default mode network is really always on, right? It feels like there's 12 trains coming in at once, where we find it a little bit harder to move into that prefrontal cortex, that task positive network, the TPN, and it's oftentimes suppressed. And so when I work with hypnotherapy clients, we really start to learn about the rumination, the depression, the anxiety, or sticking in the back of the brain in old memories. We're kind of swimming back there where we need to become attuned, to become disciplined enough to move out of the default mode network and into that reciprocal relationship of being able to focus, right? So unfortunately, if we are unable to really create the discipline and the true nature and purpose aligned with our bigger passion and purpose that gets us to the end goal versus kind of wandering, it can end up in unhealthy habits. Drugs, we have a 50% increase of being an addict. As far as cannabis or cocaine or nicotine, it's a 70% increase. Electronics, many people now, internet browsing, our phone addictions, Facebook, Pinterest, it's a rewarding dopamine. And then there's eating and drinking, which kind of hits that dopamine on a physical level, but also a non physical level. And many struggle with obesity, bulimia, or anorexia to try to control it. And extreme emotions. So that anger, that argumentative. And so when I go into the neurocohesion program that I have for energetic type of neurodivergence, so you can understand your energy, the heat in the body, the heat in the solar plexus then overstimulates parts of the brain and the amygdala, and you end up in those anger places, right? So that's where the addictions, the adrenaline, and the impulsivity can move into areas where we're really not aligned with the alchemists of our true nature and purpose, and the lack of discipline, because we're really missing that conductor, that main conductor that has that weak connection to that prefrontal cortex, that executive function, which is the conductor of our symphony. So that's the part that keeps all the parts of the brain playing in harmony, the right brain, where we have the creative and the beauty immersive experiences, and that left brain of that manager, right? Bringing things into alignment, structuring it out so that the front and the end can be met. So that dopamine transmission, that signals from the frontal lobe to the rest of the brain are really weak. So in effect, our brains are really missing that conductor. And so we absolutely can step into the evolution of our executive function through emotional management, through EQ, through meditation. It may be a walking meditation for you, even jumping into a metaverse where you're walking through a virtual reality, where you're allowing the body to start to rewire a little bit more efficiently through experiences, so that new brain function really starts to develop more in that beautiful prefrontal cortex, what I call consciousness, right? So that we begin to be the creator, the predominant creator of our universe, in control of our emotions, whether it's anger, anxiety, depression, addiction, because we understand now that we're mavericks. We understand that we have maybe a tendency to be ill inclined to denial. But if we really focus on the best solution, and that we are absolutely able to be independent in the majority of the time of our lives, and by really practicing these different intuitive, I'm going to even say intuitive structure back into our true nature and purpose, I'm always intuitively going to go towards what I love. And so then it just begins the structure and restructuring of our lives, of really starting to question the yin and the yang of our energy, and where the channels of the misfires from the unconscious mind starts to become a little bit more conscious. And so really that is the development of the work that I love so, so much, that really taps into the self resonance. And what I mean by that is that we all have unconscious contracts. We all do. And it doesn't matter how much we practice liking ourselves or how many meditations we do a day. What matters is our self-compassion. And these unconscious contracts are the ground of that subconscious mind that I've talked about with both hypnotherapy and neurodivergence, because our lives are ran by 95% of that subconscious. And when we were little, whether you're neurodivergent or not, there were so many fixations around I'm not worthy. I can't be sad. I can't say no and let somebody down. I have to overwork this because I can't show my weakness. that your needs don't matter. And when these contracts and stories are present, they turn to stone instead of a person really preventing the emergence of the organic or the growing self that is supposed to be at the heart of everybody's life journey. And so really the root of my work is, and including with the neuro meditations, it creates that dose mechanism. You get a dose of what it needs to create the neuroplasticity that's aligned with all three minds, what I call the triune mind, which is the subconscious, conscious, and superconscious mind. And we dislodge and undo certain types of contracts that might be blocking you from really living the life that you want by creating the business that you love, by providing direct resonance to whichever types of those contracts that you had. And so with meditations and with the conscious questioning and the conscious uncoupling of those, it really helps you to internalize the process of the unconscious contracts. And as you become familiar with each one, you'll actually start to know who and which one to turn to when you come into that familiar place where you feel stuck, or you feel overwhelmed, or you feel flooded, or you notice a tendency to absolutely run to self-sabotage. And so I really hope that a new perspective through the energetics, through unconscious contract work, and to really step into the energetic resonance of your highest self. Because there's nothing to fix. There's nothing wrong with you. The neurobiological indifference of your brain has nothing to do with wrong, right, black, white, better, not better. You're brilliant. It's a matter of anybody that lives on this planet to be able to regulate their emotional and also be able to regulate the fear, the grief, the overwhelm that turns into panic. These are all emotions of motivation that really have a little bit of shame attached. We inadvertently just need to break those old contracts and then fall in love with your brain, and then start to create the new neural networks that are mostly in the disassociation of the secured old attachment to the subconscious mind and the agreements you made with yourself, with your teachers, with your parents, with society, with men, with how you viewed women, all of it. We can only transform those patterns we are conscious of, because unconscious contract work really helps us to bring those hidden subconscious programming into the light so that we can truly shift our way of being in the world and how we view ourselves and our perception of what we bring to the world. And my friends, my creative thinkers, my entrepreneur 5.0s, you're going to get this the fastest. We are moving at we no longer, our brains can move at the rate of new information. And what happened 5 minutes ago is old news. And the bell curve, usually within new research, takes 20 years. We are at a very pinnacle time of being able to manage our intuition, step into the new creative zone where we then can quantify what we have to offer, but also not dedicate our health and our longevity, our beauty, our well-being, and our relationships for it. You come first. And by uncoupling, reducing the contract work, stepping into contracts to what your true purpose and what you love is, and not fixing yourself, to me, is the answer. It's the resilience. It's the authenticity. It is the truth that we all desire, to just truly live in the expression of who we are. So, with that said, all of my love, all my light, I hope that tapping into a little bit of this desert type brain, what it can feel like, and how we can start to really drink from the water by getting support from others and moving into the whole brain learning, a holistic mind, body, brain, and spirit, where no part of us is left behind, where we find the depth of empathy every time we go into our own conscious questions to help others, and for every person to really start to understand the deep limbic resonance that is an emotionally corrective experience, which really burrs the belonging and the peace and the allowance to be oneself, to be self-expressive. So, with that said, all my love, all my light, a little bit of neuroscience today, a little bit of spirituality and intuition work, and really bringing the depth of this work and self compassion and transformational potential of our language. And really working to create that compassionate understanding of the effect of the relational trauma on the brain, how our brain is just a little bit more up on that right side of creativity and imagination, and how we can start to use our words and to use the energetics to start to heal the brain, to heal our body, and to really move through these turbulent times with resonance to soothe the mind, the body, and the soul so that we can be our highest and truest self. With that said, all my love, all my light. Well, hello, Awaken Beauty. Thank you so much for joining the show today. Were you inspired? Please leave a comment or your own personal aha moment so others can capture exactly what you did. Also, please like and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you're interested in high quality natural products for your hair, skin, and wellness, including organic CBD, please visit evoquebeauty.com. Again, that is evoquebeauty.com, evoquebeauty.com. And until next time, darling, stay sane, get sleep, and bring your sexy back.